Hi, everybody, and welcome to Remote Control 3, our conversations with amazing creative people who are driving entertainment forward. Today, we're taking you behind the scenes of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier from Marvel Studios. But before we introduce our very special guests, we greatly thank our friends Gary Radburn and Matt Allard at Dell, Rick Champagne at NVIDIA, Michael Mansouri at Meetmo, and the folks at Computer Graphics World and the NAB show in Las Vegas, which this year will be October 9th through the 13th. And remember, we're going to be drawing for a Dell Precision 5750 workstation during the series. If you're interested and you're registered, you're already entered to win. So, without further ado, let's get started. When Marvel's Falcon and the Winter Soldier premiered on Disney Plus in March, the series promised to move the MCU to new levels. And over 6 exciting episodes, the fans clearly approved. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the series measured an estimated 10 million viewers per episode, with more than 450 million total minutes watched during the 6 episodes. Eric Leven serves as the visual effects supervisor at Marvel Studios. His background includes work at Weta Digital and Tippett Studio, where he worked on films including Lord of the Rings, Ted 2, and the Twilight series. Charlie Tait has served in visual effects roles for Weta Digital as well. And you've seen his work in Game of Thrones, The Avengers, Infinity War, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Deadpool. Chris Morley, better known as Simo, is a visual effects supervisor for Tippett Studios in Berkeley, California, where he's led efforts on countless film, TV, commercials, and VR projects. Welcome, Eric, Charlie, and Simo.
Hello. Nice to be here.
We're thrilled that you've brought some clips with you to discuss. But first, I want to talk to Eric. You served as the overall visual effects supervisor of the series. How did you come to this project, and when did Charlie and Simo come aboard?
I came in, Marvel called me. They needed a supervisor for their shows. They were starting up Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision at the same time. They called me in, and that was, summer of 19, I think. And so there was quite a bit of prep time and figuring things out and previs. And I think we brought in Charlie and Chris sort of the end of the year, late 19, to get started. And then everything obviously got derailed because of the pandemic. So we spent a lot more time with everybody than we anticipated, which was fantastic because I love working with these guys.
That's awesome. And Charlie, you served as visual effects supervisor and led the team on the amazing canyon chase sequence that opens the show. What was your overall role in working with the team?
I was the VFX supervisor for Weta. I just led the team to do what they do, and under Eric's guidance, we made what we needed to make to get it done.
That's great. Well, job well done. And Simo, how did you get involved with this crazy bunch?
Well, Eric and I had worked together for over 20 years at Tippett Studio, and he went off to Marvel and called me and said, "What do you think about some of these sequences?" And we saw it, and we were involved with more of the invisible effects, which was really cool because the invisible effects include Bucky's arm and the shield for the most part, and those are 2 extremely important elements to the show. So we definitely felt good about what we contributed there, and we did some other stuff as well. But those were our main bread and butter there.
That's incredible. Well, the work is amazing, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier plays an enormous role in the MCU because, among other things, this is where we find out who the next Captain America is going to be. The series was created by Malcolm Spellman and directed by Kerry Skoglund. And as you mentioned, COVID was affecting everybody in the production. So, Eric, how did the team work with Kerry and Malcolm to approach this big task when there was a pandemic in the middle of all of this?
Yeah, it was amazing because, one of the things, the visual effects industry has been one of those industries that has said forever that the work cannot be done remotely. You have to be in the same room. Every visual effects company says the same thing. And then literally almost overnight, every visual effects company made it work. And it was amazing to see that happen. You're talking about, every company has hundreds of people that they suddenly have to figure out how they're going to work remotely. And everybody was able to do it very quickly. Everyone got up to speed within a couple of weeks. And then on the production side, we had a number of tools to, sort of work collaboratively between Kari and the producers and the Marvel people, many different tools to work with editorial, on top of the sort of regular remote collaborative tools like Cinesync you've heard about before. We were using those as well on top of some new tools. So it was there was a little bit of a hiccup, but frankly, it didn't really stop us that much because we're already in a world where we're working with visual effects facilities around the world, so we're a little bit used to working remotely between production and the VFX company.
Exactly, and so it was really a matter of just pulling in those tools that you needed that already existed, but maybe didn't get used remotely as much. I mean, CineSync's been around for a long time, so that one made sense. That's it. That's very interesting. Yeah, I can't believe how many visual effects companies I talk to now who said, why don't we always do it this way? And yet, as to your point, they were always insistent that this could never work if everybody worked remotely. So
yeah. Now, to be fair, I will say the one elephant in the room that we never were able to overcome was there's still a benefit. People talk about hallway conversations and being able to, jump on ideas and stuff. The one thing that was not solvable was having everybody look at the same screen at the same time.
Interesting.
So frequently you'd have, Marvel producers or execs, looking at something and say, I think that looks too magenta. And we would look at it and say, oh, I don't think it looks too magenta. And it's hard to know, like, is it an aesthetic call, or is it really someone's monitor is not calibrated correctly? So when you're not all in the DI, that makes things a little bit difficult. I think that's the last hurdle to really get color calibrated images sharing.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense. I've heard people say the same thing about the final dubbing as well, that people are they're listening, they're seeing differently, and they're making judgment calls based on what they see, So it is a challenge that we have to get over. Now, on the series stars Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie as Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson. Can you talk a little bit about working with the actors to create the visual effects for this, since it's such an actor-driven series?
Yeah, it's interesting because they've both been doing this type of work for a long time. They both know those characters really, really well. In the beginning, what was interesting was that the budgets were a little bit lower for the streaming show, at least to start out with. So I was trying to be very conscious of, for example, getting Sebastian to wear his glove all the time for his his robot hand. And if you wear the fingerless glove, I got to paint out those little things every time you're on camera. Can you please wear the whole glove? Well, Robert Downey Jr. didn't have to wear his whole Iron Man suit. This is not Avengers Endgame. Can you please, So there was a little bit of that. And then, Anthony knows how to fly. Anthony's been doing the wire work for a long time. So he's, listen, I'm going to go up here. You guys are going to pull that way, and I'm going to flex this way, and I'm going to swing around this way. And so he was really good like that. However, that said, they're both, I think they're used to being in this world that has a huge visual effects component. So if we were able to say, hey, listen, in this shot, when you use the shield, make sure you put it in this way and not this way or whatever. They want to get it right. They know how important it is for the visual effects team to get what they need.
Sure. And it sounds like you already have a shorthand with these folks too, because half the battle, as you know, especially back in the days of extensive green screen, was getting actors to imagine what the heck is going on around here. Because I don't see anything, right? So there's a huge benefit to the shorthand of having worked with them before. So anyway, job well done. The stuff that they did, they made it look so easy, and as we all know, it's not. So I think it's time to look at a clip. So we're going to take a look at this first clip, which is the canyon battle from episode 1. And I was wondering if you guys could just set up what we're about to see.
Well, so this is, for starters, this is one of my favorite sequences in the whole show. It was the very first big VFX scene that we started on. And we wanted to have a scene where we really get to show off Falcon flying. In the past, you've sort of seen him fly. He's done some stuff, but he's never really been the focus of a big battle scene. So here he is battling against some wingsuit pilots. And in order to sort of level the playing field in their favor, the wingsuit pilots take Falcon into a canyon. And we've seen this sort of thing before in like Red Bull videos, but we wanted to bring that verisimilitude and that reality to the scene. So here it is. So I think what's really interesting about this section of the clip is that we were basing it off of real wingsuit pilots and the maneuvers that they've done. We've seen real wingsuit pilots fly through canyons like this, and that's what the scene is based on. But then Charlie's team really took it to a whole new level in terms of what the geography looked like and how the canyon was designed and built and all that stuff. So Charlie, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. We started actually with live action clips of people doing this. Some of the shots in the scene when they jump from the plane are stunties doing this for real in these wingsuits. And they're obviously high altitude. They don't go into a canyon like this. But we get to see how they fly, how they move, and what they look like in the light. So for those first high altitude shots, we redid the backgrounds to change the height and to make it more like this desert world that we're jumping into. And then as they get down lower into the canyon, for the most part, they're CG. There are one or two live action guys who are wingsuiting at a much greater altitude, and they're rotoed out and put into this canyon with additional CG guys.
And then Charlie, this is interesting, Buzz. We had a very extensive previs, and we shot all the footage, and we had a whole skydiving unit. And then during COVID, we had a moment, we had a chance to kind of take a step back and look at the scene as a whole. And the producers from Marvel were thinking, like, it's good. We need to make it better. And so Charlie and his team actually had some time to really, and you can see most of the shots here were built on a lot of the previs. There's a whole beat with Red Wing that Charlie and the gang kind of expanded upon. So Charlie, maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, I think we got a huge advantage out of this situation. There was a notion that the previs that we started with, and which was shot to, didn't totally sell the Jeopardy, and it didn't kind of quite sell. There were questions about, Falcon. We're showing him as being very heroic and how great he is at flying with these wings, and he has a jetpack, and he's got Red Wing. And why are these wingsuiting skydivers, likely to get away from him at all? So that was an issue, and we did new previs and to try to help with the situation. And we had a very narrow canyon that they go through to try to get away from him at one point, and his wings are too big. If he scrapes, it was a good beat. And they get away from him, and then we introduce the helicopters, which are a big threat, and he has to kind of veer away in a different direction from the wingsuiters at one point to try to escape the helicopters.
Oh, in the original previs, I don't think Red Wing really made an appearance at all. He sort of showed up in the very beginning of the scene, and then that was it. He helped Falcon get into the plane, and then he never came back. So here we've got him taking out helicopters, and there's that great shot where they sort of roll together. That was all designed by Charlie's team. So there's really neat stuff that Charlie and the gang were able to bring to the table.
Yeah,
it's a very cool sequence. It really is.
The Red Wing idea, meant that Red Wing needed to do the specific thing. So we had to have a new look, a look at the design of him underneath and how his weapons work. That wasn't a feature. He's essentially part of the backpack when he docked. And how he looked underneath hadn't been revealed yet. So we came up with this weapon carousel. The idea being that, which is kind of fun, every time it rotates, there's something new. And, there's the new thing that he needs or is what's required in this moment. And it kind of looks like, it could just be 2 or 3 items under there. But whenever the bomb bay doors open, you see the last thing that he used, and then it revolves to show the new thing that he needs for this beat. And this could go on forever.
So it sounds like you guys took full advantage of the extra time you had for previs, which is a luxury that people hope for and rarely get on these kinds of shows. So congrats for making that such an amazing sequence. I know I watched it with my boys, and they couldn't stop talking about that sequence. So thank you. Now, of course, they want wingsuits. That's another conversation. Anyway, I am always amazed, as I think most of the people who watch these shows are, at watching the end credits, how many people are really involved with this sort of an enterprise. And, it used to be that we thought TV shows had tiny little crews on things, but features had the big things. So could you talk a little bit about how many people worked on this series and where they were located around the world?
Oh, from the production standpoint, I mean, we had, all across the North Americas and then New Zealand. And I think we had 7 or 8 major facilities working on the show. And each one of those, I mean, Charlie, Chris, would you guys each have 100 people on your team? Something like that?
Yeah, we probably had about 60.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. We had so many people across so many different disciplines working on it at different times in different buildings. There would have been more than 100 people, a lot more than that. touched it for sure.
And did each of you have teams that you were working with directly in other parts of the world as part of your own organization?
I did not this time. No.
Yeah, we had some help with Match Move. We outsourced to someplace in Macedonia, and as well as Roto and Paint, because we're a small studio, so it really helps to outsource that kind of stuff. And these vendors in other countries have become so talented with what they do in their craft that it's like, why not?
Exactly. And Chasing the Sun is great from a production standpoint, to get to see finished work in the morning when you show up that was done at night while you were sleeping. I mean, that's fantastic.
And I just have to say, it's like a great filmmaking technique to start off the show with something big and grand and beautiful. And Charlie and his team at Weta really knocked that out of the park. And it was inspiring to a lot of us, because everything else after that is kind of like, okay, cool, that set the tone.
Yep. No, you have to go in with a big bang. That's the important thing. I think people always say you have to end with a bang. You have to start with a bang.
There was a bit of pressure with that. We knew that that's what it had to be, and it's hard to know if it's good enough. It really is, because I think we're all looking at it to see if it's good enough. And Eric, we know that he's looking at our work to think to check it's good enough, and he has to present it too. And will Marvel think it's good enough? It's a game of second guessing yourself, and it's really hard to know when you've reached the required level. When it first went out, when the first trailer went out and people saw it and then reacted to it, I was just really excited, and I was relieved and thrilled, and there was a lot of buzz about it. People were really excited, and people were saying it looked like the level was film level work, and I thought that's what.
Yep. And it's easy for people to be skeptical now, right? Everybody has an opinion before they've seen anything. So it's nice to just kind of put it out there and say, here's where we're headed. You set an amazing tone for the series. So thank you for that. We're going to take a look at another clip here. So this one is actually from the second episode, and this is a clip of the truck fight. So could you explain a little bit about what we're going to see here in a second?
Yeah, so this is our heroes are joined with our new heroes, John Walker, who's the new Captain America. They're taking on our bad guys for the show, the Flag Smashers, and they all meet up on top of these two semi-trucks, and we have this big fight on top of the semi-trucks as we're driving a bunch of super soldiers fighting each other. Right, so we've got a mix of live action and digital people interacting on these two trucks, and for the most part, wide shots like you see here, everything's digital. What started out as sort of a we had an idea. We had a plan where we were going to shoot on a green screen, and we were going to shoot plates of a environment in Atlanta, and that would fill in for our Autobahn location. And it just became very clear very quickly that Atlanta does not look like Germany. So we ended up throwing the plates away and switched to an all CG environment. So everything you see, other than the truck tops and the people fighting, is entirely CG. The roads, the roadway, the mountains, the trees, everything, all the foliage. So, there's a scene here where Bucky is hanging on, and then the wheels are right behind his head. All those wheels are all CG. So it's quite a bit of amazing work. There's a lot of work, and it was really difficult to get this up to the level it needed to be, because it's just, you're basically looking at an animated frame. Everything is computer generated. So it was a big undertaking.
I have a question for you, Eric, on this sequence. Did you? I know in the past you worked with a lot of stuntmen to do like real previs, not digital previs. Was there any of that involved in this sequence?
Yeah, and so what's interesting is because typically the way the show worked is if it was a predominantly VFX heavy thing that there was no way to shoot this except for VFX, like Charlie's sequence, or we're flying over 10,000 feet, that was done by visual effects would previs that. If it was a fight like the Dora fight that you were on top of, Chris, that was stunt viz, because it was mostly just guys punching and kicking each other and doing flips. For the truck top, it was a weird mix of both, because on the surface it's kind of just a fight. They're just punching each other on trucks. But then how do you get these camera angles with these trucks? How do you get Mackie running through a sign? So it was kind of interesting to see who would lead and who would follow. In the end, we worked out something that visual effects and stunts worked pretty closely together to get what we needed, which was interesting. It was a different way of working. I think usually stunts kind of does their thing, VFX kind of does their thing. This one was really collaborative, which was nice.
It's a great sequence, and the integration is incredible. I mean, it's impossible to tell that that's a CG environment and there's a CG characters.
Yeah, you can't tell which bit's which. You know how each part's done. Which is
that used to be the giveaway on TV shows, right? You could always tell on a TV show.
With a sequence like this as well, you just need the one shot that's not up to par, and it will just spoil it.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I think the goal is if you get enough shots that were, you know, if there's 250 shots in the sequence and 3 of them are real, then maybe you're not sure what's real. You know, you start to question everything, and I think that's what really makes it work. It was sort of similar in the skydiving sequence too, as Charlie was talking about. There were a couple of shots where we had skydivers. It's actual footage of skydivers jumping out of a plane, and so Charlie's team would replace the jump plane with a C-130 for the show, but it was definitely real footage, and that sort of just that little hint of reality really takes it through the rest of the sequence.
It was cool that it started real as well, right? For our sequence, it started with live action inside the plane, and then live action guys jumping from the plane, and then some live action wing seaters at those first high altitude parts. That it did help.
Beautiful stuff. So speaking of changes and changing your mind on things, how late were you actually in general adding changes and updates to the visual effects before an episode would air? Were there some nip and tuck situations there, or
you know, I mean, Marvel has a reputation of adding stuff to the, you know, they want to make it as good as possible, and they'll use every minute that they possibly have to do that. That said, I was the one asking for the changes. I wasn't actually doing the work, so these guys could speak to it, but nothing felt unreasonable to me. It never felt like an absolute last minute request. I know that there were, you know, in episode 6, for example, which was the most impacted by COVID because we hadn't shot a lot of it, there were a bunch of shots, in fact, that Charlie's team also did on that sequence, where it was like, hey, we need a big reveal of Captain America. We never shot one. Go. You know, and that came relatively late in the game. But it didn't feel like, oh my God, we've got 2 days to do it. It felt like there was...
Yeah, it was interesting. There were some changes there. They wanted a big New York kind of skyline at night, which was not something that we had made yet. And it needed to be 3D. It couldn't be just a matte painting. And there were discussions around the wind it's going to smash through. It needs to be different from what we had in that actual environment. It needed to be bigger, wider, so we'd see more of New York, which made making New York harder. And it meant changing the layout of this room and how the windows were, and more roto on the plate. And when I heard this, I kind of thought, this is kind of a big one. And then it wasn't such a big deal, and it was such a good idea. When we saw the look of the shots widened out like that, so you could see more through the window and see more of what was out there, it made total sense. It was so worth doing. It wasn't such a big deal. So, yeah, the changes they're always worth doing. It's great that
you guys can respond to the changes too. I mean, there was a time when a change would take weeks and weeks and lots of change orders, and this is going to be really difficult, and we may not make it. And now I think things have come to the point where it's kind of expected, right? I mean, it's a little bit. You're still very much in the creative process all the way until you deliver. So you want to make sure you're getting the best thing, not just the thing that was planned, and we don't have time to do another thing. The whole idea of CBBs, right, is something that everybody struggles with, and you want to put in the time to get it right. But you guys had a team that was willing to go with the flow on things like this. So that's
right. And I think you kind of sign up for that when you work on a Marvel project. And the bottom line is their producers know this stuff inside and out. And all of their notes that they give, you think about it and they make sense, and usually it makes the image better. It's just, it's sometimes it's tough when you think it's going a certain way and then it pivots a little bit right at the end there. But at the end of the day, we just pull together and do the work. And because we love it too,
Right.
We take ownership of it too.
Chris's team actually worked on a sequence. We don't have a clip for it, but there's a scene where Zemo goes to a Sokovian monument, and it was right out of Spinal Tap. They had built a monument that was like 8 feet tall, maybe shorter than that. And then when we saw the footage, it's like, this is an entire country that was destroyed, and you've got this little rinky-dink monument. So yeah, we asked Chris and his team to sort of, can you just expand that and make it bigger and better? And I don't that wasn't a late request, was it, Chris?
No. It was just to change the feel of it because it was shot. There was a lake in the background, which was interesting, and we thought, okay, that could be like remnants of the hull in the Age of Ultron when Sokovia was lifted up, and so we just did a bunch of research on Eastern European and brutalist monuments, and then just came up with something simple for the background and concentrated a lot on the actual monument, making it a little bigger, sculpting the faces to look a little more in that Soviet style, Eastern European, and and even the back wall, though it was simple, we put some thought into it and actually had it terrace a little bit. And if you look at it, it's kind of the shape of the Sokovia chunk that was pulled out of the ground. Just trying to add little bits, like thinking like if you were making a monument about something, you want little telltale signs of what went on.
So do you have a shot count of the number of visual effects that were created for the whole series, or an estimate?
It was, I believe, 2,500. Yeah, 2,500.
Yeah.
Which
That's
I believe,
amazing.
for the record, is more than Avengers Endgame.
There's a lot of shots.
Tippett, we did 400, roughly 430 shots, but a lot of them were so quick cut, for the fights and all that. That's when the shot count really just explodes.
That's amazing. Well, let's set up the next clip. This one is actually from episode 4. This is when the new Captain America and the Dora Milaje are getting off on the wrong foot. And so could you guys set this clip up? What are we going to see?
Yeah, this is John Walker is introduced to the Dora Milaje and the notion of that he's already feeling like he's not good enough as Captain America, and the Dora really kind of put him in his place.
So this was an excellent sequence in one of my favorite episodes called "The World Is Watching," and it's the Dora Milaje basically owning all the dudes in the room, which was really cool because I think they're just so badass. And speaking of invisible effects, what we did is we replaced the ceiling with the coffered ceiling and the rotunda, and we did a bunch of CG spears and also CG shield. And such quick cuts, a lot of action, a lot of match move of what was actually shot. So the stuntmen and the previs teams coming together gave us a great foundation to work from.
And I think it's worth noting, people always ask, what's the work? I would say, and you correct me, Chris, but it's probably 9 times out of 10, that's a CG shield. About 90%
of the shield was
because
replaced.
When you're fighting with the shield, you can't use a real aluminum shield. They end up using a stunt shield, which is made of rubber. It usually does not hold up. And so Chris's team really needed to make the shield look absolutely 100% like the real shield. And if you can think of one thing that everybody at Marvel is attuned to, it's the look of the shield. So
Right.
it needs to be dead on perfect.
That's true.
Yeah, another one of my favorite parts of this sequence was when Bucky's arm gets taken off. It's like a little 1-2 punch from the Dora Milaje. And it was just so cool. It's because they made this arm. They know the ins and outs of it. And it's the first time you see like Bucky's arm, completely just fall off and not ripped off. And it's dismemberment and gore. That's what Tippett Studio is all about. So it was really fun for us.
Now,
It was interesting. Speaking of changes, I remember there was a moment where the arm fell off, and Chris's team had a whole, it was a dynamic simulation of this CG arm landing on the ground and sort of not bouncing, but a heavy metal thud. And the guys at Marvel looked at him like, I don't know, can it be heavier feeling? And so it was just one of those things. Like, how do you do that? It needs to, you don't want it to feel artificial. So having to go back and those are the types of changes the storytellers are really, really interested in. It was neat to see that.
Yeah. Just like, you think of reference. It's like, okay, flopping down a huge fish. Like, That's kind of what it is. And then just using the different joints and having them just slam down.
How about that shield, Chris? We did a bunch of shots of the shield as well, and for exactly the same reason.
Right.
That was harder than expected, or perhaps you expected it to be hard. I don't know. It was very, very critical. Obviously, it's an important thing, as Eric was saying. It's got to be good. It's got to be right. To me, as an object, it seemed uncomplicated. Curved. Like this. I thought this isn't going to be too hard. It was pretty hard.
Yeah. We had to come up with special lighting rigs to get the right sheen and the right reflectivity of it, because I mean the thing has a sound design. Like every time you'll notice when he moves, it's like whoa, whoa. Yeah. So it's like this thing needs to pop, and that with some of the DI choices, they really popped it.
Yeah, and it's got to pop, but it's got to be integrated and sit into the picture, but it's got to look special. And
isn't our job fun? Yeah,
it's the best.
It's the little things, right?
Right.
That's great. Well, that's an amazing clip. Now, one quick question about the atmospherics in that clip. Were you having to add atmospherics to that, or were those in camera?
No, those were in camera. I mean, I love when they shoot stuff in camera, like smoke up the set. I don't care, and it's just like our compositors are really, really great at dialing that stuff in. So all the smoke integration and stuff was done through color correction and various element works, but mostly color correction.
No, it's great. It's a nice subtle touch.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky with that because during COVID, when we went back for reshoots, the rules stipulated we were not allowed to have any atmospherics in the air, no particulates in the air, so no smoke. So some of the scenes did have to add smoke afterwards, and so actually Charlie added it. There were a couple smoke bombs that went off, and there was nothing allowed to be practical on the set. It all had to be CG.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, yeah, atmospherics make all the difference, right? So that's great. Yeah. I'm glad they're in camera and that you're not afraid of them.
No.
Even more importantly, that's great. Well, we're going to take a look at the next clip now, and this one is actually from episode 5, where the Falcon and the Winter Soldier take back the shield from John Walker. So could you guys talk a little bit about what we're going to see in this clip?
So, yeah, this is a huge battle between Bucky and Sam, and then John Walker, who's starting to go off the deep end a little bit. So the three of them have this epic fight trying to control the shield and who has it. What's interesting about this scene, well, there's two interesting things. One, the shield is bloody for the first time in Marvel history because John Walker has just killed a guy with it in the previous episode. And two, John actually ripped Sam's wings off, which was a big deal. I think John, which should be said at this point, John is a super soldier. He's taken the super soldier serum. So Chris, you can talk about the challenges in this sequence.
Yeah, so this was by far the largest sequence that Tippett Studio worked on, and it was a lot of the same invisible effects, and it was replacing about 90% of the shield, about 90% of Bucky's arm, doing some digital Falcon work, as well as putting blood on the shield. And we were very proud of the fact to, one, put blood on the shield at the end of episode 4, and 2, rip off Falcon's wings, and 3, dismember Bucky's arm. So those were all very exciting moments that I don't think have happened in Marvel history.
We were not happy seeing those wings get ripped off of Greta.
I know. Yeah. And the great thing about working on Marvel projects is that the vendors share. And so we got a beautiful model from Weta for the wings, and we just painted it to our needs and then tore them apart, basically ripped them apart. And but what a great foundation you guys provided, Charlie.
I think it's also pretty amazing when you see the shield with blood on it. Chris was telling me it was actually easier just to replace the whole shield and make it CG than to try to put blood on a practical shield. So there are many shots where the shield is full frame right in your face. And again, this is Captain America's shield. Everyone knows what this looks like. It has to be dead on perfect. And there are some shots in here that I think are just amazing that, they're CG shields. You'd never know it. Just fantastic work.
That does look very nice.
And speaking of just reality, there comes a moment here when Sam wipes off the blood, kind of respecting the shield and getting that blood off of it. And, we could have spent weeks and weeks designing some kind of, effects animation of smearing blood, or I could just go down to the stage, because Tippett Studio has a stage, and vacuum form a green dome and mix up some fake blood and shoot it. And that's what I did.
Nice.
And then we
just so good.
We comped it in. So yeah, in the behind the scenes, we have a little footage of that. And, sometimes just shooting stuff in camera, you have it and it's in the shot within a day, and what was great is it's always a combo, because we used the match move and we used the CG blood, but the part where he wipes it off, we basically projected it. We projected physical 2D imagery onto that CG shield so it would move with it.
Nice job.
I will tell a funny story. When we were on set, again, trying to be respectful of the resources that we have, we assumed that they were going to have practical blood painted onto the prop shield that we'd be able to use for a lot of the shots where no one's swinging the shield around. And the prop guys assumed we were going to do it in post, because no one's ever put blood on the shield before. Like, no, put blood on the shield, put it on there. And then so we had to do it on the day, and no one could, what color is the blood, how thick, what type of blood is it supposed to look like? So never quite happened on the day.
Easier to seek forgiveness than permission for something like that, I think. Well, it looks amazing. This sequence is truly incredible. And talk about atmospherics. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in there too. So anyway, nice job.
Thank you.
So now that you have this deep experience of working remotely, what do you think about doing this even when you can go back to the office?
Honestly, I'm all for it. I think filmmaking is a collaborative medium, and as long as you get people in a room like we are right now talking to each other, it's all about the ideas that flow, and people come into dailies, we give notes, talk about techniques, what would be best. I go in trying to speak as simply as possible, and then all the smart people come up with ideas, and then we all come together later and see how it works out, and it totally works. It's fine.
That's great. I'm just embarking on one now myself on my next show, and we're going to have a large number of remote workers. People feel involved, they've been briefed, they've got started, they're underway. I've had some daily sessions with people. It's working already, it's just fine. We have a sort of time zone schedule, because we've got people all over, and we're the outlier really in New Zealand. So we have to work out when we can talk to people or when we can expect to see changes, and try to make it work for everybody. And we're only just getting started, and honestly, it's fine. It looks great. It looks like it's going to work really well.
Well, and you get to work with the people you want to work with, no matter where they are now, right? They don't have to be where you are.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things about working remotely and collaboratively, is that you can now choose to work with the best people wherever they are, wherever the artists may be. You're no longer limited to the fact like, oh, well, they're not in New Zealand, so they can't work at this facility. But now someone's sitting in the middle of Idaho and they're the best map painter in the world, and now they can work on your show.
That's great. Well, thank you for promoting the idea of working at home, because I think a lot of people are really comfortable with that idea. And now that companies have actually done it, you can no longer listen to that argument that this could never be done, right? We've all just
I mean, it will be interesting. It's going to be great if the technology meets the need of making sure that everybody's eyes are on the same picture, same color calibrated monitors. I would look forward to that, because I think listen, the elephant in the room is that a lot of this work there are long days, and you're not getting a chance to see your family. And so, wouldn't it be great to be able to take a 30-minute break and go have dinner?
Exactly.
With your kids, And then
and I used to say, at least now you can work in your pajamas, but in visual effects, people have been doing that for years. So
we always do that. I was going to say.
So
Don't
there's
even
no
talk
difference
about
there.
the 70s stop motion guys. They didn't wear any clothes at all.
See, and they're perfectly happy.
Yeah.
So that's great. So we're going to take a look at the final clips from the series that we have today, and these are 2 helicopter fight sequences from episode 6. So let's take a look at the sequences.
So this is Falcon, who has now become Captain America, basically chasing a helicopter full of bad guys, or one bad guy who has hijacked a bunch of good guys. yeah, this is an interesting sequence because, again, like the opening desert chase sequence, it had sort of been prevised and designed, and then during the delay with COVID, the pandemic, we were able to sort of step back and kind of redesign it and make it better. Add a couple more beats, put Cap in some more jeopardy, use Red Wing a little bit more, and really just elevate the level of the sequence. So what's really interesting about this sequence, actually just like Charlie's sequence in the beginning, is that the background is entirely digital. That we shot plates of New York at night. We intended to use them, and then due to the nature of the shots and the shot design, we ended up having to make a completely digital version of New York so that we could put the camera anywhere and do what we needed to do. So it's a tremendous amount of work. Sony Pictures Imageworks put this together. So yeah, so this was an example of a part of the clip that was added that was not prevised, and we prevised it after we stopped shooting. We wanted to give Cap a moment of sort of just a little heroic moment during the chase. So we introduced this police helicopter that gets taken out by the bad guy, and then Cap and Red Wing each come in and save one of the co-pilots, and then he uses his shield and his wings to save everybody on the bridge, and the bridge also completely computer generated. One of my favorite things in this sequence, so we had a lot of helicopter chases in this movie. I made everybody watch Blue Thunder because it's one of my favorite movies, and I think it has some of the best helicopter footage that you'll ever see. They changed the rules of filming in helicopters after that movie came out. You can't get that kind of footage anymore. So we lifted a couple of shots from Blue Thunder. One of the interesting things is the NYPD helicopter, it's nighttime. A real helicopter at night, it would be pitch black. You wouldn't be able to see it at all. So originally they tried to lift the brightness of the helicopter, and it just wasn't sitting into the plate. So we stole the same trick that Blue Thunder did, which was we mounted lights on the outside of the helicopter to shine onto the helicopter so you could see it at nighttime. So I was pretty excited about that.
That's so cool. I'm glad you brought up Blue Thunder. You'd be surprised by us how many times Blue Thunder can come up when talking about visual effects. Apparently quite a lot. I brought the Blu-ray. And we had a movie night at a friend's place, and we watched the whole thing. And
no, everybody has their arsenal of those things you need to watch. Yeah. Even if you call it reference, you still have to watch it, even if it's only somewhat related. But anyway, that's a perfect classic reference to use.
Eric made me watch it, and we didn't even work on a helicopter.
That's teamwork. We call that teamwork.
Everybody now knows of my love of Blue Thunder, but for this particular show, I think it was finally
We'll have to do a retrospective on Blue Thunder as one of our next
Eric's
series.
Eric's your guy, for sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about how the visual effects play into the emotional content in the movie, because there's, the series has some really incredible story reveals in it, and visual effects can't really draw attention to themselves in these moments. So could you talk a little bit about how the visual effects and working with the actors help drive the story forward from an emotional standpoint? Well,
I think it takes a supportive role, and I think that's what visual effects should be used for. If we didn't use visual effects for that fight, the shield would be rubber and bouncing around. And what's funny is there was a little clip that I believe Marvel used for one of the short trailers, and it had one of the shots where that didn't end up in the final picture, but was a stunt shield, and it bent. And of course the fans saw that, and they made a meme of that. And that's one of the things that I just love about working on Marvel Pictures, is because the fans are incredible. Like, you have to stay at the top of your game, or else they're gonna find some inconsistencies in the work.
So just from beginning to end on a project like this, how long are you all working together? From the time you first come into this until you wrap the final episode?
For production, it was almost not quite 2 years. I think it was about 20 months.
About a year slightly for us.
But and that was, again, because of the pandemic, that was longer than was anticipated. We were supposed to come out 8 months earlier than we ended up coming out. And I'll tell you, it was so great because you form such amazing relationships with all your coworkers over the run of the show. It was really great, to see even just on Zoom calls, be able to see these guys every other day or something like that. It was really great.
It was a lot of fun. We were supposed to, the date that we were supposed to be finished came around, and really looking back, we weren't that far into it at all at that point. There was a lot more to do, and it, you know, it had been pushed. It's not like that caught us by surprise, but we, you know, the extra time was well used. It was good having the extra time, and we made maximum use of all of it. I think it shows on screen. I really think it shows on screen. And when we got that reaction from the fans that the work is at that really high standard, you know, obviously I felt good about it, but I thought, you know, that extra time sure helped a lot.
Sure. I can imagine it did. Well, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a seamless joy to watch, and your ability to make this one continuous feast for the eyes is truly amazing. So congratulations and thank you for everybody who watches the show and loves the show. You guys did an incredible job. And I'm sure we're going to see you folks at some award show this year. So thank you to Eric and Charlie and Simo for joining us here today.
Thank you, Buzz. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
That's it for Remote Control 3 this week. We'll be back with more on the multiverse with NVIDIA's Rick Champagne soon. In the meantime, remember, we'll be giving away the new Dell 5150 workstation in this series. If you've registered, you're eligible to win. So thanks again to Gary Radburn and Matt Allard at Dell, NVIDIA, the NAB Show, Computer Graphics World, Michael Monstory and Meetmo for this amazing collaborative meeting platform, and of course, our Marvel and Disney family and friends for making these conversations possible. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.